Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about the radif and its online representation. So the radif is a musical tradition that constitutes the basis for Iranian classical music. Although it has been around as an oral transmission for centuries, the tradition as we know it nowadays was organized in the 20th century in 12 daskaha, which we can define as modes, themselves divided in gushe, which we can define as melodic segments. During a performance, the musician performs gushe within a daskha so that a musical framework arises. Here I have been looking at the representation of the radif on YouTube. The curative aspect specific to the platform influences the musical tradition in the sense that the tradition becomes constitutive of an intangible heritage, and from its widely available aspect, seemingly becomes representative of the tradition. In this talk, I'm focusing on recordings organized by individuals other than the musicians featured, because I wanted to examine what parts of the radif were likely to be transmitted and recognized as such. I identified two main forms: recordings linked to academic research and those that are primarily artistic or creative. Recordings linked to academic research usually present shorter tracks and a higher number of divisions within the mode. The radif will usually either be divided in daskaha and gushe and posted as such, with the naming of the gushe integrated in the recording, or will be presented as a longer recording of the whole radif with pauses and naming between each gushe. For instance, there is a full recording of the radif lasting over 5 hours and available on YouTube. The recording is from the researcher and musician Dariush Talai, and it names in the recording each gushe. We can hear, for instance, Daskahe Shur Daramad, which is the first gushe in the Daskah of Shur. The academic aspect of the recording is clear from the scholar position of the musician, as well as from the naming of the tracks within the recording. The gushes are quite short, and the recording aims to demonstrate what they sound like. By contrast, recordings made with a creative purpose present longer gushe and do not integrate the name in the recording. The connection of the recording to the radif is not always indicated, and sometimes is only evidenced by the video description that shows that the recording or performance is part of Iranian classical music heritage. In the creative recording of a daskha, the music flows between gushe without a clear division. Often the recording will indicate the name of the daskha being used, but in the description, which makes sense because the creative aspect of the radif encompasses the melodic patterns around the various gushe. But when searching for the radif on YouTube, one may only come across academic recordings as they are more present. So to summarize, the difference between academic and creative recordings is perceived through the way the naming of each gushe divides the recording, integrated in academic recordings as a spoken title, while creative recordings leave more space to silence and musical pauses in the transition between gushe. The YouTube representation of the radif therefore highlights some issues. The first one has been raised by other researchers in regards to the systemization of the radif. The separation in small gushe and daskaha traces back to the 20th century, and the researcher Mohsen Mohammadi argued that this separation was primarily aimed at Western musicians who wanted to transcribe the tradition through Western staff notation, while it's traditionally learned orally and through the repetition of music, not by naming each part. Similarly, the researcher Mohammad Amin Kashmiri explained that in notation, the gushe are not always separated, but by using separation between each was a matter of convenience when researching about the music. So while the systemization has integrated the radif into broader musicological research outside Iran, it only represents a small part of the radif and is linked to the second issue raised by the YouTube representation. Because the curation is organized through the information easily available, the channels that curate recordings and link them to the radif transition usually do so with academic recordings, where the recordings serve both as a musical piece and as a description of a specific daskha or gushe. So for instance, there is a YouTube channel that actively builds an archive of various radif recordings and stresses its importance for Persian music heritage. The channel presents a large variety of recordings, which, apart from being part of the radif, do not share similarities, as they are from various masters, recorded live or studios, and are from both past and contemporary performances. Despite the large number of recordings, only the one made with an academic purpose, performed by the musician Darius Safat and recorded by the researcher Lloyd Miller, clearly states the Daska. The other recordings are linked to the radif in the sense that they are described as Persian classical music, but they do not present any other information. So while I've said before that creative recordings offer wider flexibility in terms of musical division, it still highlights that to an audience that does not know the radif, when they look for it, they're more likely to hear recordings made with an academic purpose for which the sound differs from creative recordings and is more standardized. In this sense, the YouTube curation is influenced by the fact that individuals who are not specialists will name the radif, Daska or Gushe in accordance with the information available, and the information available is usually so from research developed in the 20th century. So the online radif reveals that the information available is related to the systemization of the music as undertaken by Western musicologists, and raises broader issues regarding the shaping of a cultural heritage. Even though YouTube offers alternative to curatorial hegemony held by institutions, the platform still complies with knowledge rankings that exist in any art transmission.